Good morning, everybody. We're going to get the meeting started. This is our first meeting where we are going to be live streaming.
No.
I'm sorry, recording and making available afterwards for people to view. So what we'll do is let's get started. We have two meetings for each of our organizations today. One is our annual meeting and then our regular meeting. So the first meeting that we're going to call to order is the annual meeting of the IDA, and I'm going to ask Jasmine to take the roll for that.
Sure. Tim Dean?
Here?
Mark Doyle?
Yeah.
Kathy Bauer?
Here.
Stacy Leventhal?
Here.
Jamie Picone?
Here.
Don Sagliano?
Here.
Al Torrigiani.
Okay. The first part of the meeting, everybody received in their packets a section of the meeting that we are going to do by consent agenda, but I'm going to just go through the topics very quickly, and if for any reason somebody wants to pull something out, you're more than welcome to do that. The first thing is the approval of the minutes of the January 9th, 2019 meeting. The next thing is the election of officers for the year 2020. Chair Tim Dean, Vice Chairman Mark Doyle, Secretary Treasurer Kathleen Bauer. Appointments, you'll see Chief Financial Officer, Compliance Officer, Records Access Officer, all will be handled by Marilyn Yerkes, and Records Appeal Officer, Procurement Officer will be Sarah Lee. Renewal of the Chief Financial Officer's bond. The renewal of IDA membership in the New York State EDC for our body. Authorization for approval of 2020 expenses incurred. Trying to see, there's a paragraph marked there, and I'm trying to see the end of it, which I don't.
Oh, it should be two.
Okay, it should be at the end of that paragraph. It just explains what those expenses incurred are. Appointment of members to committees. Audit, Kathleen Bauer, Stacy Langenthal, Donald Sagliano. Finance, Kathleen Bauer, Stacy Langenthal, Donald Sagliano. Governance will be comprised of our entire board. Readoption of various policies. Those have not been changed or modified in any way since they were last viewed. Designate the law firm Capelina Rothschild Egan LLP. Designate official newspaper, the Poughkeepsie Journal. Designate depository banks as indicated. And those are all the items that are on the consent agenda. Does anybody have anything in there that they would like to pull out and discuss in more detail? Okay, if not, what I would ask for is a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Stacy, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion has passed. Okay, discussion agenda. Is there any old business? Okay, new business. Sarah.
So, in your packet, you will see the draft of the, it's going to be at kind of the end of your loose packet before the clipped section. So you see.
Starts with
Yes.
starts with the minutes and moves on.
Yeah, it starts
to
with the
there.
minutes, and then it's the uniform tax exemption and criteria policy.
Okay, let's get-
It's all
all the way to the end?
Like
Oh, where it says.
right before the clip part, so the last 3
Oh.
pages. before the-
Okay. There we go. All right.
So, we made changes to the uniform tax exemption policy. It included some minor changes such as layout and clarification of language. The major changes of the policy is the inclusion of the new criteria to include environmental and green building factors into the construction, as well as clarification and criteria on how the board would be considering projects that are requesting a deviation, and then certain projects of special projects such as adaptive reuse projects, for-profit market rate housing projects, and hotel and motel projects. So those are the major changes to the policy, and
So just to go a little bit further with
Yes.
that, the additional requirements for those are, what is the purpose of that? What is it to encourage or to?
so it's just to clarify that those applicants that are coming to the board for IDA benefits, that they will need to go through additional review, and there'll be additional criteria that will be applied to their project in order for them to be considered by the committee. So it standardizes those requirements for those projects.
And just again, for everybody's edification, and what was the history or what caused these changes to come about? Some of them I know were sort of recommended or mandated by state government, is that
Yes.
correct?
So the criteria, what was mandated by the state was the inclusion of the environment, the green
Correct.
building. What we've done is include those special projects because they kind of are projects that we have been seeing more of in among our IDA, and they are also, while allowable under state statute, they do have some ambiguity. So it's just to clarify what our organization wants from these applicants when we review these projects and the criteria that they'll be considered under.
Some of you may recall that we've had some discussions when these projects have come in, asking really hard about the what if we didn't on these sales tax exemptions and things like that, because sometimes it's not been as forthcoming as we'd like as to do they really need this, and we shouldn't be granting it unless there is a true need. The project couldn't work without it, so it's good to see that. Okay, what else?
So I just want to ask if there was any questions from the board regarding the changes to policy.
I don't have questions so much as comments, if I may. And most of this is, after discussion with Sarah, and that is, I was keen to see that there was some kind of enumeration of what would involve a standard for the environmental measurements, and Sarah told me that in fact in the questionnaire and the application there are standards. So for example, there'll be extra points essentially for being certified by LEED or some other component. So that's good to know that we have that sort of in line with our policy. And then I have comments, and I don't know whether now would be a good time or another, just about sort of the general layout of policy.
As Mark said, Mark and I had called me yesterday, and we had a discussion about the policy and the layout. So there may be additional changes in this policy. We're not going to review those and discuss those today, but they may. We just got them yesterday, so we're going to take a look at them. But it's just a comments for review. And
Are
so
these more of, are you talking about changes in wording or changes in grammar or changes in layout, just so I understand?
Not to this policy at all,
Okay.
so what we're considering now.
Okay.
But was in reviewing the policy as it was set out, I found it actually quite difficult to put all the pieces together.
Okay.
And I thought that the same would, if it was hard for me, it would be
Sure.
hard for an applicant.
And these are involving the environmental ones?
No,
Oh,
sort of in
okay.
the entirety of what we
Okay.
do. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Sure.
I thought that in terms of what we put out to the public and our website and so on, having a format
Got it.
that was inclusive and read thoroughly from A to Z would be quite useful. And
Yeah.
that's
So-
a longer term project.
Okay, so I'm clear. So you don't have a problem with us, any components of this being adopted, but for the future, you'd like to suggest some other things to make it easier to understand and to
Exactly.
execute. That's fine.
Yeah, and Mark and I discussed that because our policy, because of the changes in our policy, will cause changes to our
Sure.
application. So many of these things could be addressed in the revised application. As well as we do have, that accompanies the application, a information bulletin that does, state in there that a meeting between the applicant and the staff is encouraged before they file their application. So it's more procedural than it is actually
Sure.
policy.
Yeah. Just making
So,
things
but,
easier to
yeah.
read and understand.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, but you're comfortable with the
100%.
as written. Okay. Conflict of interest questionnaire.
Yep, so in the packet, you'll have a section that has clipped documents. If we could have you fill these out before you leave this morning. They are our annual required documents. They are in it is the Conflict of Interest Questionnaire, the Code of Ethics Acknowledgement, the Mission Statement and Performance Measurement Policy, the Mission Statement Performance Measurement Acknowledgement that you have read our policy, and the Board Evaluation and Audit and Finance Committee Evaluation Questionnaire. So if you are not on the Audit and Finance Committee, you have only received the Board and Evaluation. If you are on the Finance and Audit, you have 2 questionnaires to fill out.
So Sarah's asking us to fill these out today because obviously that way we won't forget to do them at a later date.
Yes.
So I would encourage everybody to do that, but at the same time, it's a pretty thick packet, so I understand if you may not have time to do it today.
Yes. The other thing I want to just point out is in this, it does, on the agenda, it does list that there's the financial disclosure statement. In your packet, we have pulled this statement for now, and that we'll ask the board to complete it at the February meeting. The reason being is that the county legislature has developed a new form, is not ready, it was not ready in time for this meeting. And I didn't want the board to fill out 2 forms. So I have been told by the legislatures that it would be complete by the February meeting, and so we'll complete it then.
Okay. All right, so that covers pretty much everything on the discussion agenda, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to get a motion to close the annual meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you. Second, Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay.